lovely to have you here, or if this is your first time, then welcome! A huge shout out to everyone liking, commenting, subscribing, engaging on YouTube, and a massive thank you to everyone supporting over on Patreon. Without these awesome folks, I could not keep sharing and making this kind of content. So, right up the top, big thank you to these awesome folks. Patreon members, of course, can download this entire set at the end of today's video. So what are we looking at today? Well, you read the title, you can hear what's going on in the background. I'm a big fan of Ben Frost. If you've never come across Ben Frost, you're in for an absolute treat. For sure, you've heard his music. He's done a bunch of stuff for some Netflix series you can see here. But if you've never listened to his tune called The Theory of Machines while sitting on a train looking out the window, pondering the nature of existence, then you're in for a treat. Check out Ben Frost. So what I often do is when I hear music that inspires me, I make a little note in my phone about, just a little thing. Sometimes I don't even include the track or the specific thing that inspired me. And then when I come back to that sort of a month or 2 months later, I have my own impression. It's sort of still there somewhere in my head, the memory of what I heard, and the note reminds me of that. But without going back and listening to it exactly, I'm then able to interpret it in my own way and explore it in a different way. So what you can hear going on in the background is definitely inspired from something I heard in Ben Frost's catalogue, but it was my own interpretation of that. And it's this kind of way of triggering a kick drum and a bunch of chords together, and then being able to kind of destroy those and go crazy like that, and have a bunch of things sort of interacting with each other. So I'm going to press stop on that, and we're going to start this stuff from scratch. The only thing I've got prepared today is a snare drum, just because I found a nice one that I wanted to use, so that's the only thing I've got prepared. I'm at 140 BPM. Let's dive right in. We're going to bring in a drum rack. We're going to go for instruments. We're going to find drum rack in here, drum rack. We're just going to drag that into a new channel. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag an operator onto C1. I'm going to make a kick drum using operator. You don't have to make it. You could use any kick drum sample you like, but I want a little bit of control over it, so I'm going to drag an operator into C1. I'm going to come into my drum rack here. We drag this snare up so I don't get confused. Into my drum rack here, double click, make a MIDI clip, and I'm going to make it 4 bars long. And I'm going to make this kick drum sort of pattern happen, something like that. Actually, let's just make it 2 bars long for now, so we can work on this stuff. Going to press play. That's going to sound exactly like that, exactly like you'd expect that to sound. Right. Let's bring in an arpeggiator. Well, first of all, let's turn this into a click. Actually, let's just turn it into a nice little clicky sound so we can hear. There, just a nice little click. Set this to sort of -12, get a bit more output, and let's turn the filter all the way open, and we've got a little click happening there. Right, MIDI effects. Let's bring in an arpeggiator. The first thing we're going to do is create that effect. So I'm going to switch this to milliseconds, and we can hear that by going like this, we're going to get that kind of effect, right? So I'm going to set this to be at its slowest rate, and I'm going to use an envelope MIDI to control that, so that each time this receives an input, a MIDI note, which is happening at the start of every second bar at the moment, every time it receives a note, it triggers this envelope. So I could use this to control this speed here. So I'm going to turn the velocity off, I'm going to turn the attack all the way down, and I'm going to go something like this to begin with. I'm going to make it go unipolar, and I want this to go -50% because I want this blue line to go here, like that. So I'm not going to map that to here. That's also already pretty close. I think maybe I don't want it to go quite so slow. So let's turn that down a little bit to maybe 40, maybe 42, 43. Yeah, that's actually super nice. I'm not going to do anything else with that. That's doing exactly what we want it to do. We could, of course, make it sort of slow down quicker if we change this curve here. That's quite nice as well. Actually, I kind of like that. Let's do that. Okay, let's turn this into a kick drummy kind of a sound. I'm going to put this on fixed, and I'm going to make it kind of a low note somewhere around here. Cool, let's bring in a pitch envelope here. Give it more, yeah, and more. And let's turn this, where am I looking? Sustain. I want the sustain down. Maybe not so high on the peak. Yeah, this is sounding something a bit kick drummy. Maybe a little bit lower on this. And maybe a little bit more decay on this sound here. There we go. Let's turn the release off. A little bit less here. Something like that. That's sounding pretty kick drummy. Oh, and let's set this to be unison as well. Mono. There we go. This isn't quite doing what I wanted to do on the pitch envelope. There we go. A little bit longer. Okay, cool. Let's add a little bit of post-processing to this. Let's add a saturator. Let's saturate it a bit. Let's use this on bass shaper mode and just add a bit of drive here. There we go. Maybe I don't want this quite so low here. There we go. A nice little sort of approximation of a kick drum happening there. I'm going to bring in the second oscillator here, and I'm going to put this on white noise, and I'm going to set it to be this output mode. So each of these is functioning out. There's no FMing happening here. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's come back to this envelope. Let's bring the sustain all the way down. Okay, cool. I want this to, I think, get longer. Yeah, something like that. That's going to be really nice. Okay, so let's use this same... No, let's bring in a new envelope MIDI for that. MIDI effects, envelope MIDI. So now I'm going to make this get longer. So it's going to do something like that. I'm going to set that to be unipolar, and I'm going to map that to here. And I want this sustain to be... There we go, something like that. It's going too long at the end. Yeah. Okay, I am going to go quite in depth on the sound designy stuff today, because the nuance of this is going to be really beautiful in the sound design. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time dialing these things in. Cool. Okay, so now we've got these three things are what's generating our rhythm. This is just our kick drum in here, so let's select those. Let's group that. Let's open this up. Let's call this kick. Tell you what, I'm just going to add an EQ. Let's add an EQ after the saturator and really bring out some of the kickiness of this. Where's it gone? EQ, EQ8. Yeah, let's bring out a little bit in here and give this a bit here. There we go. What happens if that's before the saturator? Oh, that's actually really nice. Cool. Okay, now I'm going to create a second layer here that's going to play some chords. So I'm going to turn that off. Let's bring in a wavetable for this. Instruments, wavetable, drag you in here. And we can hear that that's playing our same rhythm. I'm going to use a square for this. I'm going to dial in the sound a little bit first. So let's do this. I want this envelope to control the filter cutoff, so let's come to the matrix. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. Cool. Now, I'm going to change this as the sound goes through as well. So this opens up. So let's use an envelope MIDI for that. We've got this one, which is kind of doing this already on the kick on the white noise. So let's see what happens if we map this to here. Okay, so we need to make this unipolar. And let's make it shorter to begin with. Shorter even. There we go. Tiny bit longer, something like that. Okay, cool. Let's give this some unison. Let's give it maybe some noise. Let's add a little bit of pitch modulation. So let's come back to the matrix here, LFO1, and we want that to control this detune here. Let's come to the matrix. Oscillator 1. There, something like that. Way too much. But let's make it quicker. And much less. Yeah, this is giving just a little bit of wobble there. cool. Okay, this is sounding really nice. Let's make this play some chords. Let's use the MIDI effects. Let's use expressive chords in here. Let's pick a preset. Let's not just drag expressive chords. How about something like Future Soul? Sure, why not? Let's bring that in here. Super nice. I want to use this envelope to control the amount of unison as well. So can I do that? Just click on this. This envelope MIDI, I want it to go from 0 to 30. And I want to attach that to this. Yeah, that's doing exactly what I want. Bring the frequency down a little bit. I think maybe... No, let's put this on a different mode. Let's give it a little bit of drive into the filter. A little bit of resonance. Yeah, super nice. Okay, cool. Let's make this to a chord progression. So, we know that with this arpeggiator, oh, not the arpeggiator, we're in here. With this expressive chords device, this is triggering C3 in the MIDI, and we can see it's playing this particular chord. If I play a different chord here, we get different chords. So let's make this to a chord progression, and we're going to do that using a pitch device. So let's go here to MIDI effects. Close this. Let's bring in a pitch device in here. So I can now change the chord using this. Different chord. Different chord. Different chord. Okay, so I'm going to modulate this inside this MIDI clip here. So I'm going to double click in here. I'm actually going to bring this open again all the way up. Let's drag this one across here. And let's add another one in here. Yeah, this is really nice. Okay, so now I come to the envelopes here. Pitch. Let's add in some different chords in here. We can even make it change chord halfway through the sequence here. So what about if it's something like this? No, that's a bit too intense. Let's make this one do something different. Oh, that was kind of fun. That was kind of fun. Let's leave it like that. Yeah, that was kind of nice, actually, like this. Yeah, really nice. Cool. So you can go wild on this stuff. You could add a scale device after this if you wanted it to all be in a particular key. So if we wanted to all be in F Dorian, which I seem to be using a lot at the moment, I would just drag this in here, change this to F Dorian. So we're getting a diatonic progression there. I'm going to take the scale off. I don't think we need that. Okay, cool. Let's do something else with this wavetable where as this sound opens up, it gets sent to a reverb. So let's bring in a reverb after the wavetable. And we want audio effects. We want hybrid reverb. Let's bring you in here. Let's turn this up to 100% dry wet. Let's put in a utility in front of it. Turn this all the way down, and we're going to use this same envelope MIDI, this one, to send to the reverb. So we set it to unipolar plus 50%, and we tack that to... Yeah, cool. Really nice. Let's do the EQ here a little bit. Okay, cool. Let's group those things. Command G. Let's right click. Let's create a chain. Super nice. Okay, let's macro some stuff. So I think, first of all, I think what is going to be actually really nice is to connect that with the filter frequency. So first of all, let's come to the wavetable. It's in here, double click, right click, map to macro 1. And now I'm going to also map the gain of filter 4, which is this thing here, map you also to macro 1 in here, and map you to macro 1 over here. Let's control some of these ranges, so let's open up the mapping here. I want this to just go to 0. So now when I open up this macro, the reverb opens up as well. Yeah, let's also add a tiny bit of lengthening the reverb to that as well. So let's come here, let's attach this to macro 1 also, to EQ high gain. Let's constrain the range on that a little bit, so it goes from something like... Yeah, that's our super closed one, and super open. Let's try opening it up now. 13 seconds is a lot of reverb. Yeah. Yeah, super nice. Okay, cool. Where I want to come back in here, because after the wavetable, I want to sidechain that against the kick drum. Let's bring the kick drum back in. Super nice. Okay, so I want after the wavetable here, after all these effects, I want to add a compressor. Compressor in here. Sidechain open, external, select source from, what are we on, channel 6, drum rack. And I want kick post effects. Yeah, super nice. Cool, let's open up the filter again. Where have you gone? Is it in here? Yeah. Does that want to change a little bit more? No, super nice. Okay, cool. Let's make a situation where we can like totally destroy this sound. So we're going to do that. First of all, actually, I think I'm going to glue this all together with a bit of raw. Audio effects raw. Let's bring you in here. Add some compression. Second, drive. Yeah, a little bit less compression. Yeah, I'll set this to single mode. A little bit too much. Let's come back to multi-band, yeah. A little bit on the highs. Yeah, cool. And I reckon this could go down as... So the quicker ones have a bit more drive. So let's just use this same... where's it gone? Let's close that. Use this same envelope MIDI here. Let's come here. And let's set this to be unipolar. Let's just make it go -10 onto this. Yeah, so as the sound opens up, it gets less drive. Let's give you a bit more on the way in. Yeah, super nice. A little bit less compression. Yeah, cool. Okay, let's destroy this now. And we're going to destroy it with a saturator. So what I'm going to want to do, I think I'm going to put this on soft sine. I'm going to put a limiter after it because this might get a bit loud as I'm testing the testing the limits. So I want a bunch of drive and I probably want to go, yeah, something like that. And I want some clipping. Yeah, so let's map this. Let's actually group this so I can do this all nice and easily. So I want to map this to macro 1. And I want that to go from 0 to 12. Sorry. Yeah. And I want to map this to the same macro, and I want that to go from 0 to also something like 12. No, maybe that was kind of intense. something like that. And let's map this to the same macro. Let's make this go downwards. So I want to go from 0 to something like this, so that we're not going crazy on the volume. It's going too low on the volume, so this can actually come up. This is going too high. Cool. And let's map this as well. So we now have a nice destroying button. Can we destroy this? What happens if it's on something like the bass shaper instead? Kind of like that. Actually, yeah, let's go with hard curve. That totally destroys it. Okay, cool. Can we map that now to macro 1? This instrument rack in our main instrument rack. Yes, cool. Now I want to map this. That's already mapped. Okay, I don't want to map that to macro 1 in our main instrument rack. This is our... This one I want to map to macro 2. Which macro 2 did that just map that to? So map this to macro 2, and that's done the main map, yes. Let's map this to macro 1. Yeah, super nice. Two lovely ways of modulating that sound. Cool. Let's add a little snare drummy thing in here. So I'm going to grab the snare drum, bring it onto D1, and let's program in some snare drum stuff here. Let's come back to the notes and let's make it do sort of a standard, something like this. Yeah, let's grab those and put those in here as well. Okay, cool. Now I want to use these chords to create a sort of layer on the snare as well. Let's make this snare drum -6. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's bring in a spectral resonator. Audio effects, spectral resonator in here. We're going to select MIDI mode, and we're going to take MIDI from itself. And we want the MIDI to come from the instrument rack, wavetable, pre-effects, yes. Yeah, let's switch to chorus mode. No, I want pre-effects, I want post-effects. There we go, let's bring the harmonics down. Yeah, cool, let's transpose it up an octave. Really nice. A bit more chorus. Yeah, this is really nice. Okay, cool, let's reverb that. Let's bring in a hybrid reverb. Give it 100% wet. Yeah, super nice. And we can hear it's only hitting when there's actually a MIDI chord being triggered at the same time, which is actually really nice. So we're not going to get it on every snare. So let's group these, Command G. Let's bring in a dry channel. Yeah, super nice. I think we could pitch this snare down a little bit, maybe. Yeah, super nice. Let's add just a little bit of reverb to the main snare. Let's just use reverb for that. Yeah, cool. Let's do a tremolo thing on this spectral resonator. So let's double click both of those. Let's bring in, let's do this using a utility and an LFO because I want to change the speed of it, you guessed it, with each trigger. So let's bring in an LFO after this, LFO in here. I want this to be just going something like this, 13%. Let's attach this to the gain here, map to the gain. Yeah, okay, cool. Envelope MIDI effects. envelope MIDI, where have you gone? Here we go. And I want this to be every time that the snare drum is triggered, so it needs to come in before the snare drum here. And let's make it go sort of, I want you to fall like this. Cool, let's make this as like this, and let's map this unipolar to the rate here. Yeah, super nice. I think it's going too fast. Yeah, super nice. Cool. Let's process all of this together. Let's bring in an audio effects. Let's bring in a drum bus at the end of all of this. Make this something like this. I want to just take off the top end of this snare, I think. So where are we? In here? Yeah, let's turn the filter on. Yeah. Actually, no, I kind of like it. Let's sidechain this chordy stuff also against the snare. So this is our chords rack. Let's close all of this. I think after this limiter, we want an audio effects, we want a compressor. And let's take the sidechain from the snare. So that's input source drum rack 6, snare post mixer. Yeah. Yeah, so these chords are then really ducking behind that snare chord. Let's destroy it. Yeah. Let's create some macros here. Let's call this muted. So we can quickly jump back to that. And there you have it. Like I said, I didn't go back and specifically listen to any Ben Frost tracks. This was an idea that I wrote down after listening to some of his music a few months ago. And I thought, yeah, cool, this is an interesting idea to interpret in my own way. So, hope you got something from today. Hope you enjoy making Ben Frost-inspired chord stabs like this and destroying them. Thanks for being here. I'll catch you next time.